Welcome to the Heartlight Sessions, a podcast about light working your way through dark times. I'm Jenee Halstead. I'm a singer-songwriter, holistic vocal coach, intuitive guide, and plant medicine facilitator. I'm also a survivor of childhood abuse, autoimmune issues, and my 30s. I'm on a lifelong healing journey, and along the way, I want to share the ideas and teachings that rock my world. Every week on Heartlight Sessions, I call in artists, healers, and thinkers to explore what's helped them live and thrive from a heart-centered place. Because the heart, it's where the best things happen. If you've ever wondered how to unlock your biggest breakthroughs or how to come back from that stuff that tried to kill you, you know the stuff I'm talking about, the stuff that's supposed to make you stronger. Or if you've ever wondered how to just do you straight from the heart, you're in the right place. So join me, won't you? Let's turn on that heart light. Turning on my heart light. 1,000 volts of sunshine. We're rolling. Oh, I'm so excited for this guest. I have Kathe Izzo with me. How to encapsulate your you is very, it's going to be hard, but I will try. So you are the love artist, aka the love artist.
Yeah.
You have a Substack called My Brainiac Amour, or
Amor, like
yes,
love. Yeah.
AMOR. A subtle activist. You're a subtle activist, an activist of love, I really think. And I'll just say, quickly, that Kathe's been one of my mentors. You were really the first person to teach me about things that I had no clue about. The Ma frequency.
Mm-hmm.
You were the first person to teach me about the phases of the moon and how they sync with our cycles.
Mm-hmm.
And really opened me up to that. Your love elixir was kind of the first. I'd never taken anything like that in my life. And it really kind of opened me up into my subtle nervous system of love and rose and all these beautiful things. And the Enchantress, which I'd never heard anybody talk about, the Enchantress. And when I met you, that was really the phase that I was in, because I actually had been going through menopause, but I was very young.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So to have that archetype, because I was very in I'm going into the Crohn's phase at 40, and to have you as an example and a mentor, for me, just it really opened me up to oh, and you were the first person that I ever heard talk about your beauty. So just admitting your beauty and talking about your relationship to your beauty. Oh, it's so many things. So we can jump off from there.
I can talk about all those things. And it's so funny, hearing you say those things, I'm like, wow, I have so much work still to do, not just because I have so many things to teach. I mean, I've been, it's interesting, but I think it's part of the Enchantress. So maybe I'll talk about that first, but I've been really moderating how much I do. I'm a very ambitious person. I love to work. I'm very, very creative, but I am a projector. We don't have to get into human design too much. And actually, I'm not. I do a lot of things. I am an astrologer, but I'm not. I know enough human design to look at my own chart. But I am a projector, and projectors. Those of you, there are probably plenty of projectors listening to this, and we need to be invited. And the problem with projectors is that they're such visionaries. They can see so much.
Yes.
They can see such a vast kind of landscape that a lot of people can't see. So it's hard for them to wait to be invited because they feel like people are not seeing what they see.
Yes.
And so, so For me, I have always initiated projects my whole life, and it's been okay. But I just have had people, human design people, always say, you need to rest more, you need to receive more, and I'm really, really embracing that now. And so, I'm not getting as much done, but I'm much happier. So I would love to be teaching more about the Enchantress and the lunar, and have in the past, but I feel like I'm very slow right now. I guess just for the people in the audience, so the Enchantress is not something that I thought up on my own. Everybody's familiar with the maiden mother crone way of looking at life and also looking at the lunar cycle, looking at the seasons, all these things that are based on the lunar phases. And I was doing, uh, it was on some weird technology that doesn't even exist anymore, but it was kind of like podcast video. And I interviewed, it was called the oh God, I don't know if I can remember, but the hag. So hag means the edge. It means like the hedge. So it means
Mm.
the edge between the domestic and the wild. That's what hag means, which is
Mm.
really interesting. So that's why I always use the word hag,
I
because I
love
think it's really
that.
beautiful, right? So this wildness that is becoming an elder, it's like, returning to this wildness of nature, kind of outside of, the domestic realm. So it was something like the fierce reality of the hag or something like that. And I was
Mm.
interviewing at the time, I was in my early 50s and I was interviewing people, 65 plus women. And it was really good. I interviewed some famous people. I interviewed, some people just that I knew that I thought were inspiring. And in one of the shows, somebody texted me. There was like, it was a lot like Zoom, but it was just
Yeah.
more for video casting or whatever. It was before Zoom. Anyway, and somebody wrote in the comments, well, what about the Enchantress? And I was,
Mm.
trying to interview, but I was kind of dialoguing. And they were like, well, it is part of the Celtic tradition. And I had to look really deep to find it, but it is out there, but it's hardly being used. And of course, we're going to talk about Guru Jagat later, but Guru Jagat is
Yes.
like, you need to trademark that. You need to, like, no
Right.
one's doing it. And of course, I do
Right.
it a little bit here and there. I just embody it, but I have, worked with so many people individually around this idea. So it's this idea that between the mother and the hag, there is this other realm called the Enchantress. And it's interesting because it doesn't have like their four quarters or anything like that, because everybody's different, right? So
Yeah.
everybody goes through puberty at different times. Everybody enters the mother phase at different times. I went through menopause at 39.
Yeah. That was
So,
also something,
oh, did I tell you? I shared
yeah,
that with you?
that helped me a lot. Like, because I was going through when I met you, and having your kind of mentorship, hearing you talk about that was something that was really important for me.
Yeah. Well, one thing that I do really love about myself is that I've been saying lately with everything that's going on, I'm like this eternal optimist. And I say that in a joking way. I don't know if it's necessarily that I'm an optimist, but I'm always like, oh, okay, this is what we're doing now. Okay. Like I just like roll with it. So,
Yeah.
when I found I was going through menopause, like postmenopausal, I thought I had a cyst or something. I stopped getting
Mm.
my period.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just like, okay, this is what's happening. I mean, I think I might have had a tear or two when she first told
Yeah.
me, only because I have
Yeah.
3 kids. So I
Yeah.
was like, I need to have more kids. But, it was just like unexpected.
Yeah.
But I just kind of rolled with it. And I didn't really make a big deal about it. It wasn't until I got older and then people started talking to me about menopause. And I'm like, well, and I did like little things. Anyway, I'll get into that more. But so yeah, so this timing, so the Enchantress, what the Enchantress is it's the most powerful time. So it's not necessarily post-menopause, but it's kind
Mm-hmm.
of like the ending
Mm-hmm.
of the mother cycle. So it's an overlap between the mother and the hag. So
Got
it
it.
goes from late motherhood, and it doesn't have to be just about women that have children. It's just
Yeah.
from this productive kind
Mm-hmm.
of, you go from childhood and then you're in the world and you're creating things and making things. And then at the end of the mothering, you're still making things, but it's also like maybe you're leaning back some and maybe, you're taking more time for yourself and you're
Yeah.
less obligated to the world. And that's
Yes.
the time, but yet at the same time, that's time when a lot of, queens in history or
Mm-hmm.
because they didn't have any weren't having any more children.
Yeah.
And also it was like this sexual prime. Like there were these queens and they could do whatever they wanted and they could have
Yeah.
lovers because they weren't going to get pregnant. And like,
Yeah.
their partners, if they had them, had to just let them do whatever they wanted. So it's a great, great thing. And I think these days it's really necessary because women are, just staying, not, I mean, I think older women are really beautiful too, but women are kind of staying more vibrant and juicy past
Mm-hmm.
menopause.
Yeah.
There's lots tools and
Mm-hmm.
teachings that weren't around for women before. So
Yeah.
yeah, so that's basically, the idea behind the Enchantress. And then when I teach it, it's really mostly like most of my classes, it's really setting the table for people to really share their experiences.
Yeah.
I think that's my forte is like to invite and draw the stories out of people and then the stories kind of evolve and then like that I kind of teach from there from
Mm.
people's individual experiences. So
Yeah. I love you're really working in the, container of archetypes
mhm.
and you don't meet very many people who are doing that, especially like in the entrepreneurial realm or the mentorship realm. And there's just a layer of like almost extra protection there or something. It's very beautiful, it kind of like you're doing the work because you're also an astrologer, but you're working with all of
Mhm.
these like subtle bodies and, you know, in the field. And I don't know if you want to speak a little bit to that in how you sort of became the love artist and your
Do you
activism.
do you do you not know the story of how I became
Mm-mm.
the love artist? Oh my
No.
God, it's such a good story. I mean, this is a whole podcast in and of itself. So I have had so many lives. I feel like I'm in like so my first, I am a mother. I have three children, but I was an artist and I still am, but I was very active, very ambitious, went to art school, studied film and multimedia art and I was very, very interested in conceptual art and in the kind of art that was like in the world, like an artist would actually touch you, or the
Mm,
art would take place out on the street and then it might be documented. And, some famous artists in that world, female artists is Linda Montano,
mm-hmm,
who's a friend and inspiration to me, and Marina Abramovich, who I've
mm-hmm,
met. We have so many, I wouldn't consider her a friend, but we have a lot of parallels and we've been in the same place at the same time for many things. So these are people, with
mm-hmm,
much bigger platforms than me in that world, but I was in that world and I was really doing a lot of things like in the studio and like being naked and people interacting, it was a whole era of that, which I'm talking about kind of like the late 90s,
mm-hmm,
across that turn of the century. And then I was invited to be in a show and I was asked to, it was like an underground version of the Whitney Biennial, which is where all the
mm,
big upcoming
mm,
artists are.
yes.
And of course, there's a lot of people who have issues with that art world. And,
Mm-hmm.
now we talk about it as empire and like
Yeah.
culture is colonialism and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So there are people who are not in that scene who wanted to do their own biennial. An artist named Sal Randolph started this God, what was it called? I'm so sorry. I'll remember. We can put it
Okay.
in the notes. But anyway, but it was this anti-biennial. It had a name,
Nice.
but anyway, and so it was early because it was like, like 2000, I think. And so it was all on the computer, which was kind of cool at that time. And it had to be on the street or in the world. Everything was listed, and there was ways you could engage with the artist, and it had to be free. And so I was just like, "Ugh, I can't do this. I'm really tired. I'm moving." And then she said, well, just do something you do all the time anyway and just call it art. You don't even have to do anything. And I thought, oh, well, I fall in love with people and people fall in love with me. I'm just
I
that
love
kind
it.
of person. So I set it up that people could sign up to have a love appointment with me. And at that
Mm.
time, I didn't interact with people at all. I didn't call them, I didn't email them, I didn't meet with them. And I did it for a month, and there was somebody signed up for every day. And I just thought of them when I was like, I did a little interview with them, but then I thought of them, I was out with my dog and, with my kids, and then after that month was over, I was just like, I'm going to do this forever. And
I
I just
love
kept
it.
doing it and doing it. And then I was emailing and I was calling, and then eventually I was meeting people, and then it really took off. And I was having installations in museums and galleries and department stores and train stations. And I would make these little forts and have these love
Oh my
appointments
God. I
literally for 10 years. So yeah, so this is way before we ever
yeah.
met. And then I went from there into the plant spirit world because I was so disillusioned with,
Mm,
I mean, I was getting some play, but they all needed something to sell. And I
mm,
think I could have easily made beautiful documentation to sell, but at the time I was such a rebel. I was just like, I'm working so hard. Like, why?
yeah.
And then I also was a single mom. So I wasn't making any money. And I started kind of stumbled into an ayahuasca ceremony. And I'm not
Mm,
going to go into that whole story, but I
hmm
realized with a boyfriend and
hmm
he kind of kidnapped me. I didn't even know what was going to happen there or that I had to stay there all night or anything. But I had this huge epiphany that first night that this was like I was face to face with God. I was face to face with love. Like I
Mm,
didn't need to be in the art world anymore. And I shifted into, I just dove, head over heels with two of my daughters into that world
mm,
and just promoted people and kind of managed people traveling. And also, I started doing a lot of integration work for people in the ceremonies,
cool.
which was like the love appointments, but better,
Yeah.
And so, yeah, so, and then like sort of Kundalini came in around that time too.
Mm,
So with the Kundalini and plant spirit part of my life, and, I was still having love appointments, but I was charging for them. I was able to
hmm
support myself. And, my
Wow.
friends that I was friends with at that time in the art world, they're still making art and they're still kind of, I could have
Yeah.
been there, like doing
Yeah.
great, but at the level I was. And like, I think if I had spent all this past bunch of time just promoting myself in that world, I would be a different person than I am now. And I like
Totally.
where I am now.
Yeah.
So thank you for letting me give you that
Yeah.
update. I don't tell that story that often. But I think people think I just called myself the love artist. I did never called myself that.
Okay.
But I made business cards that say Kathe Izzo, and underneath I just wrote love artist.
Got it.
I used them, and then people start just, this is before like even big social media. People just were like, Kathe Izzo, the love artist. And like just one thing led to another. So
I love this because it speaks to the ease that purpose can have.
yeah,
Like I feel like
exactly.
when we're
Exactly.
entrepreneurs or when we're like, soul creators or something, or artists or creatives, we were like, I gotta figure it out and I gotta do it and I gotta work so hard. And like for me, what's been coming up from spirit is just like I love to sing more than anything, and it's the most free and easy thing for me. And spirit just keeps saying, just sing, just
Yeah.
sing, just
Yeah.
sing
Yeah.
and let it unfold for you. Let it just how you just described.
Yeah.
You know,
Exactly.
I love that.
Exactly.
So you're in Manhattan in like the kind of an
At that
amazing
time.
time. Yeah.
At that time. Yeah.
For how long?
Um, well, I was born in Brooklyn, and then I lived between the city and the suburbs, till I was in through high school.
Mm,
So I always had family in the city, and when we lived in the suburbs, we were like, my father worked in the city. We were like less than a half hour outside the city. So I was
yeah.
in the city all the time. And then I went to school in Boston, but then I came back to New
hmm
York for a while. And then I, raised my kids in Provincetown for 10 years and then came back to the city again. So I would say, probably maybe two-thirds of my life so far have been in New York.
Yeah.
But, with what you're saying now, and I don't know if I'm jumping ahead, but, I'm living in Truro right now, which is near
hmm
Provincetown.
Yeah.
And I was just buying my sandwich at the local store, and this older lesbian that works behind the counter, and she and I always gossip. And we were just talking about how, like, not only do we not need New York, we don't even need Provincetown anymore. Like,
Yeah.
we just live
Yeah.
in Truro, which is kind of rural, even though it's like 5 minutes away. It was really cute. But yeah, no, it's interesting. Like right now, I'm sort of doing the same thing, and things are going really great. I'm surfing, I'm making memes, I'm writing poetry. I am doing one-to-one appointments,
Hmm.
like session work with people, which I
Yeah.
love. And
Yeah.
my clients right now are all like, decolonizing and
Hmm.
divesting. I'm like doing a lot of counsel about that, which I love, and still a lot of people with the medicine. So, and
Hmm.
still a lot of like moms and counseling about parenting. So, all the things I
Mm.
love. And yeah, it's just like, yeah, it's the same thing. Like, I feel so relieved to be just, like going to bed early, which I
Yeah.
love so much when I
Yeah.
get in my bed. Like it all feels so easy. And I'm not, I want to say because of, I don't know when this is going to come out. I'm not like even in my conversation when I was getting my sandwich, we were talking about, sort of the state of the world and how lucky
Yeah.
we were to live in Massachusetts, how
Yeah.
lucky we were to live in a place that has very strong community where people really talk to each other, face to face, to be in
Yes.
a place that has always had relatively liberal politics with lots of social services, a state, So I'm not like saying like, oh, everything's happy,
Yeah.
but I have to say, a big part is exactly what you're talking about in that like I'm not doing to the best of my ability, I'm not doing anything I don't want to do. And for
Yeah.
years, even in the art making, that's the thing. It's like you spend like 90% of the time strategizing how to get
Yeah.
people to see your
Yeah.
work.
Oh,
I was just like,
you're kind
I
of
was just so
chasing,
sick of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
I'd love to talk about your memes and your platform right now. And
Hmm.
it's really helped me because when um when the war started in Israel and things started to unfold, you're seeing these like, you're seeing what's happening and you're just like, I mean, I'd be up at 3 o'clock in the morning, like staring at the ceiling, like just
Yeah.
replaying things that I'd seen in my mind and
Yeah.
like, I mean, I just, there's no words.
Yeah.
And just seeing like your form of, I was thinking about you last night. I was in medicine ceremony. I was in mushroom ceremony, and you came into the ceremony, and it was kind of like I was seeing sort of your visuals on your Instagram page, and
Hmm.
about like everything is about tenderness and about love, and so it's this dichotomy of like holding the horror of the world with the most delicate, you know, love.
Well, I mean, there's so many things I can say about that. The first thing I'm
Yeah.
going to say, and I say this with total love because I know it's not intentional, but it's just like the war in Israel. The war is in Gaza, and it's not a
Yes.
war, it's not
Yes.
occupation.
Exactly.
And I know
Yes.
people that just
Thank
call
you.
all of it Israel occupied Palestine.
Yes.
So
Thank
yeah, so
you.
I just want to say that no, it's okay, but I think people, don't realize. I mean, I always say when COVID happened and people that have long COVID are like, you mean the COVID lockdown? Because
Right.
you know what I mean?
Right.
Like
Yeah.
COVID's still happening. So I
Yes.
just think I always, have to remind
Yeah.
myself. So I just say that for you and for
Yeah.
everybody. I think that sometimes I worry that there's a whole world. So being making memes, I wasn't part of that world. It's just like amazing. It's like this thing of like you follow your bliss. I didn't even know how people could make a meme. Like
Mm-hmm.
I call them meme poems, but like a meme spread. Like it seemed like so much work. And like, how do people put these up every day? Some people put them up a couple of times a day. And now I cannot stop myself from making them. I could probably put up 5 a day. It's become my
Wow.
spiritual,
Wow.
creative process. It feeds me so much. And it's just like, I'm just in it. It's like a river. It's just like, and a lot of people are like, did you see my post, my post, my post? And I'm like, I am so deep in my own river that I
Mm-hmm.
don't really see a lot of other things.
Yeah.
But the thing is, like, there are these collaborations between political meme people that I really respect. And I don't get invited often. And I think it's because of my approach, I think is very personal to me. And
Yes.
also they have like a little bit harsher approach, but I
Yeah.
totally love their memes and I
Yeah.
get it, but it's like the way I do the memes, it's hard to mesh with other people,
Yes.
and I
Yeah.
take, that's a good thing for me, but I also sometimes wish I could do it more. Every once in a while, I'll get invited to collaborate. But I think it's just the way I am. I mean, I hate to be negative, but I really don't think it just kills me to say this literally, but I don't think we're going to turn this war machine around anytime
Mm.
soon,
Hmm.
unfortunately. If we were, it would have happened. It would have happened
Hmm.
before the election. It would have
For
happened a long
sure.
time ago.
Yeah.
So I think, and not to make this so heavy right now, but it's a really
Yeah.
important part of my work, is
Yeah.
that I kind of made a vow at some point that if all these children, women, and men were going to die, and they call them martyrs, which I think is so beautiful, and their faith is so beautiful, I was going to make it worth it,
Mm.
in that I would not stop holding this line. And when I say Palestine is everything, I really mean it. It's homophobia, it's misogyny, it's racism, it's classism, it's it's elitism, it's slavery, it's abolition, it's the whole
Yeah.
thing. And so so that was the kind of commitment I made, so that I posted almost every day since October
Yeah.
7th. There's a few days I
Yeah.
didn't. And I also made a vow to do some like deep, like Al Jazeera, or some like really present art, I mean news source, and like really
Yeah.
look. And there were times where I couldn't, and I had to take a break, and I felt bad about that, but sometimes I
Yeah.
had to fill my cup. But so yeah, so that's what I feel like. So that go to my memes. You never asked me a simple question. I'm a
I know.
man
I'm so
rapper.
sorry.
I'm a man. No, no, no. I love it, but I'm like, I'll talk forever. But anyway, I just go by my instinct,
Hmm.
but I feel like it's very inviting for people to think about Palestine, and for
Yes.
people to think about how it affects their life, and to
Hmm.
think about what kind of daily things they can do, which may seem like it has nothing to do with Palestine, that
Yes.
will kind of continue. I'm big on like every decision that you make has a either supports empire or starts to dismantle it, even at tiny, tiny levels. And every once in a while, I'll get way off and very, symbolic and abstract, and I won't have had a picture of a Palestinian child or any kind of hardcore discourse. I kind of bring it back in, but sometimes, I just go into that poetry because a lot of it is just like my personal process, and people relate to that in their personal process. And I think a lot of times, you know, even now I'm leading this sadhana, this 40-day sadhana. It's called the sadhana of possibility. And we started
Mm.
before the election.
Mm.
And a lot of the discussion in that group, so it's a 40-day prayer practice every morning at 7 in the morning, East Coast time. And a lot of the discussion in the group is about forgiving themselves. And
Mm.
like you
So
feel
big.
guilty and then you shut down.
Yes.
Like, so that doesn't help,
That's
you
part of
know?
what
So
gets
that's a
you.
big part. Yeah,
That's
that's a big
that's what
part, I
gets you.
think.
It's I
Yeah.
think it's also part of the war machine and the
Yeah,
colonizing, is that
totally.
you're so shut down with your own guilt and shame, you know?
Well,
So
that's a manipulative tool.
exactly.
That's
That
the thing. The
exactly.
hopelessness,
Yep.
the inner persecution, that's how they
Hmm.
get you. They make you
Exactly.
powerless, you know?
Exactly.
Yeah. And
This
it's
is
also
yeah.
so crazy. I just want to say one other thing, talking about where I live, because it's beautiful here, but it's not, it's just this,
Yeah.
it's like beautiful summer houses, and it could be very bougie and
Yeah.
very much part of the capitalist system. Lots of not movie stars, but people in the entertainment
Yeah.
industry that have some, because it's a gay resort. And but anyway, yeah, no, I run into people on the street in Provincetown. They're like, "Oh my God, I'm so glad you're still posting about Palestine. Like you're the only one that's still posting." And I'm like,
Mm.
that is not true. Your algorithm is
Yeah.
really screwed
Yeah.
up. But I'm also like, well, thank you. I'm glad that you're getting my vibration. But I was like, wow, this was months ago that someone said that to me.
Mm.
You're the only one still posting about Palestine. And I'm like, yeah, well, maybe you need to look a little harder.
What is one thing that someone listening could do to start to um unravel empire internally?
Um, well, one thing, I'm just gonna say an external thing that somebody posted today. I just want to say it because I didn't really think of it. I get so many requests to send people money. And in Gaza, and somebody said, you don't have to send them money if you just write them back. Like they're
Hmm.
just living for that. Like you're online, they have a
Mm.
phone, like actually, because there's lots of requests, and a lot of times you're like, oh my God, you're overwhelmed. So I just want to put that out there because I never thought of that to write
Yeah.
somebody back and
Yeah.
say I can't, but I care.
Yeah.
But anyway, no, the inner work is on the most simple level is looking at what you spend money on and
Mm.
looking how you make money.
Mm.
And even I I moved my bank account
Hmm.
last year in one of the global strike weeks to a local bank that only
Hmm.
has three branches from Bank of
Yeah.
America. Unfortunately, I still am paying off a credit card with them, so I still am connected to them, but my debit card kind of checking account and lowly savings account. So I did that and I felt really good about that. I think, it's thinking about, where you shop, how you shop, and it's hard. It's so many things. And my kind of worst thing, which I haven't even looked at yet, is like streaming services, which you can
Yeah.
just see
Yeah.
how problematic that is. So I'm like, well, that's like kind of keeping me together right now.
Yeah.
So that's like how I take a break. And maybe I'll get to that and figure out the alternative, but at least I'm thinking about it. Like I'm
Hmm.
like, oh, like I'm looking at these things and like look at this. This is Amazon, this is Disney.
Yes.
Netflix just wiped out all of their Palestinian library. I'm sure they have some kind of influence. So,
Really?
as I said, yeah, yeah, you can look it up. So I haven't canceled my accounts there, but I am kind of tracking that. But I'm like, not shopping at Whole Foods. That's
Mm.
Amazon, not buying from Amazon online. I
Mm.
personally don't have an Amazon account, but my daughter does. So sometimes I will use it for like a video. Um, just also just thinking about, so with that, you can see that's comfort, right? So that's comfort. So it's like we are so geared towards comfort. That is the
Hmm.
American promise.
Yes.
So that is a lot of what was behind the election and how it went that way is that people want to preserve the American way of life.
Hmm.
And the American way of life is built on many people suffering.
Yes.
I think the short answer to all of that is to just be in the day every day and just thinking about, how much am I addicted to my own comfort? Like that I can't even make a phone call or that I
Yes.
can't even, um, just switch my bank. Like that was really
Yes.
hard for me to switch my bank.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm
Yeah.
still cleaning up some of the automatic,
Yeah.
because everything goes through there. So I'm
Yeah. It's
still cleaning it
exhausting.
up.
It's exhausting.
Yeah,
The
every
other,
once in a while something bounces and I'm like,
yeah.
oh, so
Yeah.
it's like it's a big deal.
Yeah. It's also interesting because you you have to trail actually most companies now because unfortunately they almost all of them go back to
Yeah,
BlackRock or Vanguard
right.
or State Street. And that is the
Yeah,
pinnacle of the evil empire,
right.
So it's even like knowing, your credit union or those kind of things, it's like that's what's so difficult is we're so enmeshed and so in bed. We don't
Yeah.
know. Like
Well,
every
that's why it's
sector
just
is,
right,
yeah.
exactly. That's why I think that's what I'm saying is that if we can't, get an arms embargo today, which we're not
Mm-hmm.
going to today, it's like you can kind of untangle. Like I do it even with celebrities. Like
Yeah.
I will be like, if I'm gonna make a meme and there's a celebrity in it, I
Yeah.
just do a search. I'll be like,
Yeah.
Rihanna, Zionist, Israel, Palestine,
Right.
and it just comes up,
Right.
like what they've said, what they've done. It's like there's this show talking about watching TV. There's this show on on Apple that so many people told me is like the best show ever called Disclaimer. And it's like Sacha Baron Cohen. And I will
Mm-hmm.
not watch him.
Mm.
He's an Islamophobe and
Mm.
I will not watch him. And it's like, my kids are like, is that such a big deal? But I'm like, I think it is
Mm.
because, like if you say that's okay, then you say I mean, I'm sure I watch people that are Zionists or have bad politics, but I do
Mm-hmm.
my best to like, not give people a hall pass,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I mean the celebrity culture. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
I'm sure you didn't want this conversation to go this way, but I mean the whole celebrity culture, the
Yeah.
whole professional sports culture,
Yeah.
like that is so bad for so many people.
Yeah.
There are so many poor people. It's just like a crazy amount of money and they get total carte blanche, but it's like you seem like you're kind of a whiner when you talk about it, but then you see what happened like after the Met Gala. People were just like,
People are
block,
done.
block, 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 block. Yeah.
People are done. They're done with celebrity. It's like, nope, we're good. I don't, it doesn't really mean much anymore to have a
No,
celebrity endorse you, you know? It's
no,
like, sorry, like the world is
no.
a dumpster fire right now.
I know. I do
How
like
does
to be
your,
entertained though. That's like my big
I
weakness,
know.
but
I know, but as far as like changing the world and politics, and it's really comes down to relating. And it's like, what does this person have? Like, they can't relate to my life in any way, shape, or
yes.
form. It's yeah.
There are
Even
also
people,
huge carbon footprints. Like
yes.
one celebrity.
Let's go into talking about where do we want to go from here? Something a little lighter.
I think we should go for, a little
Oh, go
lighter.
ahead.
I was
Go
gonna
ahead.
say
You're gonna
maybe we
go.
should go from this realm into the Rama story
Yeah.
because I feel like there's so much of this in that story. Do you feel up for that?
I do. I do. Yeah, for
Okay.
sure.
I mean, we can keep it kind of fun for a little while.
That's a really hard one to keep fun. But I
I
mean,
know. But that
okay.
is how we met. I'm just going to turn my
Yeah.
light on. Hold on one
Yeah.
sec. Well, that is how we met, and it was fun for a while there.
It was fun.
That's
It
why
was
we
fun.
stuck around, right?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
interesting because I think I spent, three, maybe 2.5, 3 years of my life in that Sangit,
Mhm.
in that community. And it's funny because I had some of the greatest times of my life there, but I'm also really realizing that like every single minute of my life was devoted to Rama,
Yeah, interesting.
because I
So,
was
so
in,
you, do you want to does
yeah,
everybody in your audience know what Rama is, or do you want
no,
to
so
set that up?
let's, yeah, so
Yeah.
you go.
Okay, well, I mean, but I came into it kind of sideways because I
Yeah.
didn't really know. I was stuck. So Rama is a yoga community. It's an offshoot of Kundalini as taught by Yogi Bhajan, who had an organization called 3HO, Healthy, Happy, Holy. Is that what
Yeah.
it is?
Mm-hmm.
3HO. So, and that's been around since the 70s, I think, or the 60s, late 60s. And Ram is an offshoot, and the titular figure there was someone that you call Steve. I still call Hari Jiwan. That was
Mm-hmm.
his name that he took on. There's aspects
Mm-hmm.
of the Sikh tradition there, and it's a Sikh name. And I actually got a ride I was practicing Kundalini with a great bunch of people in Miami, and I just was getting so much out of it, and I didn't know anything really about the backstory of it. I was just
Yeah.
going to sadhana. It was really helping my life. Sadhana is like early morning practice at 4 o'clock in the morning. I'm in Miami. There's all these like Colombian women and Brazilian women, and they're like in their whites, like totally dressed to the nines,
So
4 a.m
beautiful.
with
Mm,
the flowers, with the
mm.
incense. So I was like, I love this. It's like being in a secret club.
Yeah.
And then I went to Winter Solstice, and the person that gave me a ride was a Hari Jiwan follower, and he was
Mm,
really interesting.
mm,
Didn't know anything about Hari Jiwan. So then at that Winter Solstice, I went because this guy told me to go, and I was really turned off. So he's one head. The Guru Jagat was like 2 years later. I was in LA. I got stuck in LA because I lost my passport, and I found out my driver's license was also expired, so I couldn't fly. It was Trump was president at that time, so it was always scary to travel. And so I was stuck in LA, and I went to this class by accident, and Guru Jagat was teaching, and she went into this thing about the mother, and like the Ma
mhm,
frequency that Jenee was talking about is like I have this project called the Ma Platform, and it's about this kind of like the original mother and this essence of the original mother that permeates everything. And so she was talking about the mother, and I have a video from the class. I videotaped like this little snippet of her talking
mm,
because I was just like, whoa, she
mhm,
seemed so powerful and she was so
mhm.
big,
Yeah.
not a yoga body, not,
Mhm.
at that time she was actually quite thin comparatively,
Yeah.
but she was just tall, like powerful voice. And I was like, who is this? And I got on her mailing list.
Mm,
And then I got an invitation to apply to be in the Graces. I just think I kind of got in there. Like I wasn't in any of her regular things. I wasn't in
mm,
Immense Grace. I was sort of curious. I might have jumped into Aquarian Women's Leadership for like a month or something, but I
mhm,
wasn't that into it. And then, so anyway, so Rama is, so this woman, Guru Jagat, she was kind of this one of the head figures of this offshoot school, and she just became this phenomenon, leading a very women oriented, uh feminist femme oriented practices, and it had this like mystery school feeling. I think with Aquarian Women's Leadership she only let
mhm,
people in the new moon or something. I was like,
mm,
whoa.
mm,
Like there was like a door
mm.
on the Facebook page or on the
Oh,
website,
yeah.
and it was like, this door will only open at the new moon, and I was
Yeah.
like, I want to get in
Yeah,
there.
totally.
So anyway, it was like a tiered system. So that was the bottom system, which was pretty much online. Then there was Immense Grace, where there were like, quarterly gatherings. And then there was the Graces, which was just like this inner circle. And you got to speak directly to Guru Jagat a couple of times a month. And didn't have the money. It was like $1,000 a month. But
It's like
I'm like,
$1,200 a month.
yeah, and I just made it happen. That's why when people tell me they don't have money to work with me or do anything, and I'm like,
Mhm.
you can make it happen, because I did make it happen. And yeah, but I was in the middle of a big transformation, and I wanted somebody like that in my court, and I really wanted someone to not just be like, this voice, but I wanted
Yeah.
someone really kicking my ass. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
That's how I So, and then in these gatherings of Immense Grace, then also the Graces were there. And so that's where you and I met.
Yeah.
You were in Immense Grace, right?
I was in Immense Grace and Aquarian Women's Leadership Society. And
Hmm.
I had done 2 years of Immense Grace and then had started the third year, and when everything sort of like ramped up with the Premka book and the film came out that Mendev and Hari Jivan, I call him
Yeah.
Steve, put out.
Yeah. Excusing Yogi Bhajan. Yogi Bhajan who is the leader of
Yeah.
the whole movement, had his Me Too moment with this
Yes.
revealing book, which was a very soft reveal, actually, compared to everything that came out afterwards.
Well, I mean, they had tried to sweep that under the carpet for 20 years, you
Yeah.
know? So I think the day that film came out, and then someone sent me a link to Wrong at Rama or Rama Wrong, and it was like,
Rama Wrong. Yeah.
yeah, and they were like, you might want to check this out. And I was literally standing in the backyard of my parents' house, and I was like going through this thing, and I was like, I'm done. I'm done. I think I talked to you. I
Hmm.
talked to Sasha. I'm not going to, I don't want to bring up too many other women.
Yeah. Too many names. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I was just like, boop, I went and canceled my subscription. and like got the email from Shabbat Pri, and she's like, I see that you canceled. And I was like, yeah, I just really need to step away. I didn't really like,
Hmm.
I wasn't like totally
Yeah.
sure. I mean, I was like, yeah, I think I'm done, but like I, had a lot of friends in there. So that was like what was really hard for me, is because that was like
Hmm.
my deep, deep community. Like I was
Hmm.
coaching women, I was doing voice work, and I was super connected. Like
Yeah.
some of these women were becoming like my dearest friends. And I was like, that's the whole thing. That's part of like being in a container that's a, quote unquote
Yeah.
cult or whatever. It's like, it was my whole life,
Yeah. They
you know?
work really hard at that. I mean, it was beautifully, I mean, it was not my whole life. I'm so grateful for, but it took a big chunk of it.
Yeah.
But it is definitely there were so many beautiful parts of that because there were so many great women in that community that I'm still
Yeah.
close with, and I know
So
you
many
are
amazing
too.
women.
And also Guru Jagat did really emphasize that you could do anything,
Hmm.
I heard that a lot in my life growing up in like the 60s and 70s, but you don't hear that a lot now, that you can
Yeah.
do anything.
Yeah.
That's not the culture anymore. And she really said that, and it was like as a woman, and not just like as a woman. I mean, I didn't feel like her queer politics were very good at all, but she did
Yeah.
allude to them.
Hmm.
But definitely tried to include, and there were people in her inner community that were queer, and but it was just like not just as a woman, but kind of like as an independent thinker, like it was very entrepreneurial and spiritual, and not necessarily like a yoga school. Like people were doing
No.
all kinds of things.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it wasn't like you can have a spiritual entrepreneurial life and be a yoga teacher. This was like big plans, and they
Yeah.
really like there was lots of homework, and
So much
different,
homework.
yeah, so much homework and so much deep inner work, and it was good. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
my family will say,
Yeah.
I'm very close with my daughters, and they didn't want to have anything to do with it. They were
Yeah.
just like, white lady with the turban
Yeah. Yeah.
sitting on the throne, like,
Yeah.
forget it, mom.
No thanks.
But they will say like it changed me in a good
Yeah.
way. Like they were
Yeah.
like, wow, like I really was getting past a lot of limitations, and I was really like getting a larger aura, if you want to go there.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, for
Yeah.
me, like I wouldn't be married to my husband. Like there's so much that like, and that's one of the thing that kind of bothered me about the documentary was like there was no one except for the one woman really that was like Guru Jagat changed my life. I was in this like
Yeah.
really bad relationship, and we're not hearing about like all of the women who like got off alcohol and drugs, like all the success stories and stuff. Like my mom was like,
Yeah,
wow,
totally.
like
Yeah,
she's like,
totally.
stay with it, stay with it. And when I started to wobble, she was like, I really think you should stay with it because like you're just like, it was giving me that like forward projection, and she
Yeah.
kicked my ass. Like Guru Jagat
No, she kicked my ass too.
yeah, she
Yeah.
singled me out a lot and was like boop boop, like public humiliation almost. But I
Mm.
had this like narcissistic streak in me that was like an inverted spiral. It was immaturity. And I know she
Yeah.
saw it. She saw it like right away and she like
Yeah.
get in there like but then
Yeah.
like she also elevated me. Like
Mm.
I'm working and teaching voice in a way now and working with music in a way now that like there was something in that, but like she gave me the platform to do that, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
But everything was kind of about like what it looked like on the
Yeah.
outside. And then, when I talked to like my friends of color, like she would put all the women in the photo shoots that were like,
Right. Like the five women of color
yeah, that were in
would
the
be in the
Sangha.
photo
Yeah,
shoots. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And
Yeah.
it was just like, and I'd speak to people that like, she was stealing people's work kind of even inside, like the Sangha,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
you
All the
know,
time.
it
Yeah.
was crazy. Like,
Well, I mean, I think that the thing is that she was not, I mean, so why the reason we're talking about this is just to say there's a four-part documentary called
yeah,
Breath of Fire on HBO if you haven't seen it. It's definitely like I do think they did a good job of telling the Yogi Bhajan story and connecting it to Guru Jagat in a way that made sense. So that I thought, because in the first episode I was like, oh, this is too big a
Yeah.
split time-wise, but I
Yeah.
actually think they brought it together, but it made sense for the people watching it, but and I feel like there was a lot of truth in there, but it skipped over things to make,
Yeah.
life is not coherent. Life doesn't make sense. Life has big gaps of credulity. I think that's the word,
Mm-hmm.
like
Mm-hmm.
it's just like there's so much craziness. And I do think so. With that said, I think she was chosen by Hari Jiwan to be the figurehead for Rama, and then I think she also had a lot of her own ideas. And
Mm-hmm.
as I told you, I don't want to name names, but somebody from the old school, OG, like
Mm-hmm.
Yogi Bhajan community said to me, like a couple of years before Guru Jagat passed away, was like, you're friends with her. You should. And this was someone hardcore who had lived the life, had lived at the
Yeah.
ashram, had been a
Yeah.
secretary to Yogi Bhajan, but she's very smart and very contemporary.
Yeah.
And she said, what she's doing, like she should just, like, if she's going to use the Kundalini, keep it like adjunct. Like she should like market her thing,
Yes.
and her thing is really powerful. And this is someone who lived their whole life with Kundalini, and she's like basically it's going to strangle her. And I think
Yes.
it did, but like you said, it's not to not hold her accountable, because the part that she was promised, that she was going to be famous and have all this money and be this guru, and who knows exactly what was promoted to her, what was going to
Right.
happen,
Right. Right.
but so she was running on that energy, and that made her make a lot of bad decisions. But, to go to the quality of the work that you and I are talking about, that came from her.
Totally.
That was not from the teachings of Yogi Bhajan. I mean, he would talk about women somewhat, but she took it and ran with it. It was her vision, that entrepreneurial thing. A lot of the business school, I was in the visionary, whatever
Mm-hmm.
that was called.
Yeah,
It
the
was like this,
visionaries something.
yeah, it was like a 3 day,
Yeah.
like only 10 people, and you
Yeah, it was a
really
deep
got to,
dive.
yeah, to project your vision for your business. And she gave a real analysis, plus everybody else gave input. And there were people at all different levels, and a lot of like heavy hitters. It was all women. And it was I want to say once again, when I say it's all women, because people in my community, I come from a very queer community, they're like, was it all women? It was pretty much all cis women. There was never, even though she talked
Yeah.
about,
Yeah.
like femme,
Yeah.
queer. I
Yeah.
don't think she ever talked about trans, but she definitely talked
Yeah.
non-binary stuff. But anyway, but that was really good. I think that was the last big thing I ever did with her, and I got a lot out of it. It was like after that I started my first, which I don't think you were part of. I had like a school called the Luna Ship, and it
Mm-hmm.
was like a monthly, kind of
Mm-hmm.
Aquarian women's leadership kind of
Yeah.
thing. And that was great. The only reason it actually did really well, the only reason I stopped it was like, I don't want to do this every month.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
this
It's
is
so
too
much
much work.
work.
But yeah, so that was the last time. I mean, we spoke maybe a couple of times after that, but that was the last time I was really in her presence. And that was during lockdown, and I was at
Mm-hmm.
home, it was a
Yeah.
video. But,
Yeah.
you
It's
know,
like it's interesting. I mean, they did do a pretty good job, tying it all in.
yeah,
Yeah, and like we both said when we were talking privately, I think there could have been one more episode.
at least
But
one, I think.
yeah,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's interesting because you see her almost like backed into a corner,
Yeah.
looking at like this different perspective and kind of the shift that sort of what they were talking about in the documentary where the lawsuit came on and then you start to see like they're saying that she shifted,
Mhm.
and you can tell, I mean, I don't know. It looks like maybe there was like a massive, intense stress and unhappiness.
Well, I think it was all in her name. Well, I guess it was in Rama's
Yeah.
name, but
Mm.
I mean, they say in the documentary, and I had heard it, that of course you have this book that comes out. You refer to the Premka book. People that don't know, it was a book that came out of someone that was a secretary for Yogi Bhajan back in the day, and it starts with her having an abortion with a child with Yogi Bhajan. That's the very beginning of the book. And, it's the first time something like that it was written in a book and it came out and everybody saw it and all these groups came out and people were discussing it. So, and that came out right when the COVID lockdown started. So those two things, I mean, I'm just assuming from the information I've gotten and also just common sense that really caused a lot of financial difficulty. And they said it in the documentary, and I had also heard it that, that was like these clothing businesses, there was all these businesses,
Yeah,
and that
so
it
many
was going
businesses.
bankrupt,
Mm,
various studios that weren't being
mm,
used.
mm.
And so I think even though there were other kind of figures around, she was the business person. She was the
Yeah,
business mind.
yeah,
And I think, but then again, she, who knows with the weight. Also, I witnessed her personally being so compulsive with money.
yeah,
And so, like having this whole lifestyle and everything that just was built on this idea that there would be unlimited money. When Yogi Bhajan died, he was still
yes,
like a
yeah,
multimillionaire. And so anyway, I don't know. She also could never, I know you and I have talked about this, I've talked about this with so many other people. She could never admit that she was wrong,
yeah.
ever.
That was the shadow.
Never apologized
Yeah,
ever, even for little things. So when that book came out, she doubled down supporting Yogi Bhajan, saying that the man had been dead for, however long. He died in 2004. He couldn't defend himself and that these women were lying. So she
yeah,
basically said the women crying rape were lying.
yeah,
And she really doubled down on that. She never said she was sorry. At any point, she could have
mm-mm,
said,
mm-hmm,
I was wrong, but she never did. And they implied in the documentary in a dramatic way that killed her, but I feel like she really changed after that.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I feel like, well, that's why I left because I was like, I was really looking for um mentors who are walking their talk,
Hmm.
and I was like, yeah, all the but Yogi Bhajan stuff, whatever. You're getting so tired.
Yeah, that's okay. I want to finish this, but
Well, yeah.
yeah, no, it's like it's getting dark here. You're
Yeah,
on the
yeah.
West Coast, so I'm
I
like,
know.
it's only 4:15, and I'm like, it's
Yeah.
bedtime.
Yeah, it's bedtime.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, I mean, like, yes, the Yogi Bhajan stuff, blah, 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 whatever. But I was like, yeah, it was the response to that. And I'm not seeing examples of women who are actually like powerful and are like kind to their staff, or this like, is it out there? Because you just see
Yeah.
these like voracious, women that are cutthroat or whatever, and it's like, okay, is there anyone out there doing this? And I thought that I had found this mentor in Guru Jagat that was like, a feminist and was really like bringing women up. And then you come to find out that there's just this like completely different side to her and the way that she's treating her
Right.
staff. And like, yeah, it's interesting. And like, was I in a cult? What happened there? When I left, my
Do
friend,
you feel like you were in a cult?
when I left, like I called my best friend and she started crying. And she was like,
Because
I
she
didn't,
was worried about you?
yeah, she was worried. And
Yeah.
she's like, I
Yeah.
didn't think you were going to leave. I felt like you were in a cult. Like everything was Kundalini 24/7. Every answer for everything was Kundalini.
Yeah.
Like, so I was just like riding that high of like,
Well, it did make you really high. It
yeah,
does make you really high. And just like anything else, you don't want to come down.
yeah.
I think you're also younger than me. I
Mm-hmm.
think that makes a difference because I think her real like focus was women in their 30s. And you
Yeah.
saw that in the documentary
Yeah.
of people that weren't quite getting the things from life that they wanted.
Yes.
I think that was like really her focus.
Yeah.
And I think what I want to say about the cult thing when I say, well, do you feel like you're in a cult, is she could have put out all that stuff
Yeah.
that she put out,
Yeah.
and you could be overly attached to her, like it happens with all sorts of things,
Yeah.
multi-level marketing,
Yeah.
medicine, whatever.
Yeah.
And like we weren't we weren't all living together. I mean, they did weasel tons of money out of us, but we weren't tithing in a way,
Yeah.
like just giving everything to them. And so in that way, a lot of the things are very cultish, but they were not, there wasn't like sexual favors, really
Yeah.
not, as far as I mean, Steve is another story, but
Yeah.
yeah, not with Guru Jagat. And I don't think she was interested in that at all, in that kind of manipulation.
Mm-mm.
So so there was like, but the thing is, I think where it was a cult was that there was a larger agenda,
Mm-hmm.
and that she was kind of doing her own thing for a while. And then, like, if there had not been the reveal about Yogi Bhajan, maybe she would have had a longer run of doing what she loved,
Yeah.
which would have continued to be beneficial.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm just saying, like, it's not that I don't think it's a cult. People thought I was in a cult too. But
Yeah.
I think when you say, was I in a cult? I think it's really like, I know people that have been in cults that
Yeah.
have completely lost themselves.
Yeah.
And I know people that follow Amma that I consider
Yeah.
it's a cult. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, who give up everything, and she's not nice to her staff either. Like, I know
Yeah.
people have been in their circle with her, and people like the hugging saint, it's
Yeah.
like it gets fucked up when
Yeah.
there's money and power.
Yeah.
So I just say that I kind of to say, I think, like, when you look at something, like, I know Charlotte was
Mm-hmm.
interviewed
Yeah.
by the Nexium, the people that left Nexium, a
Yeah.
little bit cultish. And I think, like, something like that, where they were all living together and there was
Yeah.
like these intensely manipulative, like maybe the inner circle, the staff.
Yeah.
And I do feel bad about that, but they were also thought they were living their best life for a long
Totally.
time. They're flying
Yeah.
all over the world,
Yeah. I think Guru Jagat had said, if you think that ending your subscription is a cult, you're, I was like, that's pretty good, you know,
Yeah.
but there's definitely like, yeah, there's flavors.
But I do want to say somebody that the two of us know, and I'm not going to say her name, but she was doing something. She lives in California, in Southern California. She was doing something for Rama and decided that she wanted to quit. And
Mm-hmm.
and Guru Jagat said to her, this was after I had already left, but it
Yeah.
said to her, you're going to lose everything in your life, like your children, your marriage, like any abundance, because you're quitting.
Yeah.
And I'm like, but that was after she would already was going downhill, like that was like
Mm-hmm.
a desperate move. I don't know if she would have said that 2 years before, but
Yeah.
she said it. And I'm like, well, that's a cult. So like,
Yeah.
what?
Well, that's
You
like
know?
when the Vajra hell
Yes, the
concept came
Vajra.
out of nowhere, all of a sudden this like Tibetan Buddhist concept starts to come in.
She
And it's
she
like
just picked up everything. She
it's
was
just
just like
like
whatever worked. Yeah, but
I don't think
tell
that
them.
was her. I don't think that was
Oh,
her.
oh.
I think that
Well,
was
but I mean,
Steve, but
but Rama in
yeah.
general, they would
Yeah.
just cherry pick from all
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
tradition. So
Oh,
tell them though what they said about the Vajra hell.
yeah, it was like Vajra hell is basically like if you turn away from your teacher,
Mhm.
and there's a lot of like in the spiritual traditions there's this like a lot of spiritual traditions I feel like there's this whole thing about basically you have to accept like anything from your teacher. Like everything is like a gift. So if they're abusing you, if they hit you, and Charlotte had talked about like the adjustments. So, getting reamed out or chewed out, that was an
Mhm.
adjustment. That's very like so that concept of Vajra hell was just like if you stepped away from your teacher, you were going to be lost for eternity,
Mhm.
in some sort of realm where you could
Like
never
purgatory.
purgatory, where you could never like
Yeah.
get back to yourself and oh just like it's the weirdest, like the most manipulative, like
Well, and then for those of you who are not aware of the whole story, and then she passes away suddenly at 41.
yeah. Yeah. It was so weird. I was out of I'd been out for a couple years and then all of a sudden like something told me to like hop on Guru Jagat's Instagram account like the day
Mhm.
before and I was like, "Oh, it was like prayers for Guru
Yeah.
Jagat, like da 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 da. And I was like, oh, this is really weird. Actually, it was that day. It was August 1st. And I was like, what is going on? And then I looked at her post that she had was in the hospital and she was like, death is chasing me or whatever.
Yeah.
And and then I saw a link to like go on Zoom and pray for her. And I was like, it was 9:01. And I was like, I
Wow.
don't know. I'm gonna come on this Zoom like and start praying for her. And it was literally like they were playing one set of music, all of a sudden they turned on a call.
Wow.
And I was like, what? It was
Yeah.
9:07. I honestly feel like I was supposed to I almost I don't know if she called me. I mean, I
Yeah.
don't know what that was, but I was supposed to be there. And I was very conflicted in even the days and following and just like, I watched her memorial. I knew I needed closure, but like, yeah, it took me, I couldn't get closure on the topic of any of it. Like I finally
Mm.
got closure this last February. I did an Aya ceremony. And on second day, I was like, let's look at this. It's time. Let's look at it. And I was like, I can't make heads or tails. I can't like, and she, Aya was like, look, you gave your power away, didn't you? And I was like,
Mm.
I did. That's what I did. I gave my power away. And then I just like purged. I mean, it was like buckets. And that was it. That was all the lesson for me was in giving my power away. But I spent years after that being like, I can't look at it. I don't know. I can't make heads or tails.
Mhm.
Even I talked ad nauseum to my friends about this, you know, but it was just still, it just wasn't, none of it was sitting with me.
I always thought, I mean, for me, I thought she's going to wake up. I mean, this is a good place for me to stop anyway. She's
Yeah.
going to wake up and we are going to have the best time.
Yeah.
And we're going to get back together. I really, because I blocked her.
Yeah.
So I woke up one day and somebody in her circle person said, oh, she looks at your Instagram like at the staff meetings and makes fun of you, like checks everything
No.
out every day. Yeah.
No.
And I didn't even bother me because I'm like, oh yeah, she makes fun of me. She's just like
Yeah.
stealing.
Yeah.
So I didn't feel humiliated, but I was just like, because I had already really separated, but I was
Yeah.
still connected. And then I was in New York and I went to sleep that night. And in the morning, I'm laying in the bed where I'm staying and I blocked everybody so that she couldn't sit in that room and ask
Mm-hmm.
somebody. I
Yeah.
blocked everybody. And within 2 hours, she had opted off my mailing list. So
Mm.
I thought, oh, you are checking my email. You are checking my Instagram because that's the only way she would have known is that she went to look at it. So it's just like, I was just like, so I felt, not to make it about me because she had a million people that she, or not a million, but there was a lot of people that she was close to or that she kind of confided in at the level she confided in with me. I was not in her circle. But it was like I know that was hurtful to
Totally.
her.
Yeah.
And it's kind of why I did it,
Mm-hmm.
because I
Mm-hmm.
was just like, you're stealing, you're out of your integrity. But like part of me, it's one of those things like you break up with somebody, you say
Yeah.
something mean, you
Yeah.
know what will hurt them.
Yeah.
And I knew, even though it's just social media, I knew that would be like to her that I did
Mm-hmm.
that.
Mm-hmm.
So I always felt like someday, because I never talked to her again.
Mm.
And that was 2 years before she died. That was like
Mm.
when I finally was like, and I didn't talk to Pritam Syria. I talked to Hartmanjot after. I mean, we're not naming names, but I talked
Yeah.
to her after she died, like within a day after she died. We spoke on the phone, but otherwise, yeah, I never talked to anybody. I
Wow.
just like really shut it down. So
Wow.
anyway, but I did feel like, yeah, we're gonna be friends later. Like you're gonna
Mm.
come back. You're gonna wake up to yourself. You're gonna
Yeah.
like maybe everything will burn down. Like sometimes that's what
Yeah.
happens. People have a
Yeah.
bottom. People
Yeah.
lose everything and then they
Yeah.
remember who they are.
Yeah. Yeah. really quick, just to, I don't know. Like, I think the Vice magazine article came out, a month before she died.
Like she was riding such a high, and
Yeah. To
that's
fall.
the only way. And then like the money to fall, like that
Yeah.
was felt, I can't imagine. I've had times in
I
my
can't
life that I
either.
felt out of control
Yeah.
financially, nothing touching
No.
what she was the titular head for, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. The
Yeah.
whole thing, to have my friend and I were talking about this last night I've had minor situations, but to
Yeah.
be that publicly known and to have all of that tumbled down as quickly as it did and just like everything being out of control. I mean, it's devastating.
But she would make fun of like Wild Wild Country and the
Yeah.
Bikram documentary and
Yeah.
stuff. And it's like, I just can't believe like that's the
Yeah.
part that makes me feel like I know, you said to me like, well, she is accountable, but I also feel like the manipulation was so deep that at some
Yes.
point
Yeah.
she didn't think it would touch her. She
Yeah.
didn't think it, because like she would say, because it's exactly the same thing
Yeah.
as that went down with all those other gurus. But
Yeah.
she acted like she was so far beyond that.
Yeah.
I guess you never think it's about you.
Yeah. It's true. I'll have to have you on again. We'll talk more about your
I
work.
know. I know.
Thank you
Well,
so
thank
much.
you.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank
I'm
you. I had a
grateful for
good
you.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
And I'll
grateful for you too.
Thank you. And I'll post the links to your website and to your work and to your Substack and
Yeah.
anything that you want to announce right now that you're working on or you want to
Um,
direct
well,
people to
I
something.
do, yeah. I mean, really, it's kind of funny, but the Instagram, like I had a big fancy website that had animations and all this stuff, and it just had a fatal flaw in it. And
Mm,
my web designer refused to, it was like so expensive and it just
mm-hmm,
really couldn't be resurrected a couple of
mm,
years ago. And I'm like, my Substack and my
yeah.
Instagram, you'll see everything I'm doing.
Yeah.
And the memes, I think, are my prayers and my
Yeah.
best work, really.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
like, go to Instagram, it's the Love Artist. The Substack is my Brainiac Amour, and I do take private clients
Hmm.
one-to-one in a coaching container every solstice. So I'm
Cool.
going to start the beginning of December interviewing people, and there's just like 10 to 15 people per 6-month cycle, and we
Cool.
do, anything that you want to transform, like we put on the altar. It could be a
Hmm.
relationship, could be work, it could be just your inner struggle,
Yeah.
believing in yourself or whatever. And so yeah, so
Cool.
that'll be coming up. It's called High Garden, and
High
that's all.
Garden. I love that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, people, you can see that on the
Yeah.
Substack or on
Great.
Instagram. Yeah,
Great. Thank you so
yeah,
much.
yeah, you're welcome.
Love
Bye.
you.
Love you.
The Heartlight Sessions podcast is executive produced and hosted by me, Jenee Halstead. It's edited, mixed, and mastered by me too. And that theme song you hear, it's called Heartlight. And yep, you guessed it, it's from my record Disposable Love. Got questions about a certain healing modality? Or about heart-centered healing? Or maybe you just need some advice on life, love, or creativity? Send it my way. Email me at letters@heartlightpodcast.com. Until next time, I'm Jenee Halstead, and thanks for listening to Heartlight Sessions. Turning on my heart light, 1,000 volts of sunshine, rays are burning so bright.